Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's conversation about control. Tonight, I'm hemmed in by two males.
Control?
That's control.
You controlling us?
I have one on my left and I have one on the screen to my right. But I've got the control. So control's all about perception. It's about our insecurities, and it's about where we feel safe and confident. Hi, Clara. I've got somebody else that's saying hello. I only know you as Facebook user. I'm sorry, I don't have your name. We've got Anita. We've got Pia. Ola. Sarupa. Good morning, Sarupa. Bronwyn. Hi, Bron. Hope you didn't get blown away by the storm. Annam. Good evening, Annam. Well, that's nice. We've got a few people. We've also got Caroline and another Facebook user. And Olive. If you want to take part in these, when you get the invitation, the link to enter with Facebook using StreamYard, it asks you for your name, not because it's going to contact you, but so that it can put your name on the panel so we know who we're talking to. So if you can put your name, it would help. It's a bit rude saying, hello, Facebook user. And it means I'm not in control of who we're talking to. How about that for a thought? Hi, Sharon. Hi, Sally. So we've got quite a nice group here. Control's an interesting topic. Over the last month, we've done a few posts about it. There's been a lot of comment, which has been brilliant. It's really good to have people's thoughts and perceptions on what's happening. And tonight, I thought it would be a change to be outnumbered and have two men against one woman, one poor little woman. I don't know who she is and I don't know when she's going to turn up for this, but until then, okay. What is control? For me, control is something that we need in our world. Hi, Doris. Is something that we need in our world because it helps us to maintain a sense of order. When it's healthy, it's beneficial for all of us. When it's unhealthy, it causes a lot of pain, a lot of anguish for those people involved. So you can look at autocracies and how they control the people. And sometimes they're beneficial. And other times they're downright mean, by my definition, of course. How do you all feel about control? Do you feel that we need it in the world, or do you see it as something that's developed almost while we weren't looking, and it's time to do something to change it? Tony, what do you feel about that?
I feel that control is necessary. But the main thing about control is how it's used. If it's used for the benefit of everybody, keeping some sort of law and order so everybody knows their boundaries socially, ethically, and every other way, I think it's good. If it's used for someone's personal gain, I can control a group of people for my own personal gain, with obviously being detrimental to them. That's one of the downsides of it, I guess. You'll always get someone that stands up and has a great group of people behind them that they control, they lead for everybody's benefit. And you'll always get someone that will stand up and for the exact opposite. If someone stand up in front of 100 people for their own gain, irrespective of what happens to the people that they're controlling. Yeah, it's necessary. I think it's something we can't do without. It's how it's used.
Haresh, what about you?
I agree with what both of you said so far. Control to me is a necessity because it's not so much a necessity, it's an effect of working in matter and learning how to structure and set boundaries. So if you're going to be able to work within society, community, and have boundaries in place that benefit everyone, control is a part of that. The example that I have in mind is when you have a health and safety department. People love to eat out. People love to share the food they make. You've got places people go to eat. If you don't have regulations around hygiene, for example, how would you be comfortable knowing that the place you're going to eat, the food's being cooked in a healthy environment? So to me, that's a form of control. It's regulation, but it's healthy regulation. So definitely control is a must.
It's interesting you use that as an example. When we lived in northern New South Wales, we lived out in the middle of nowhere, wops. We had a septic tank, and we had a guy that used to come out every quarter, and his job was to manage the septic tank. He had to check it, empty it if necessary, etc., etc. And the last time we saw him, when he came out, he said, "Health and safety's gone mad. Now I have to employ 2 people to accompany me. One holding a rope that's tied around my waist so that if I fall into the tank, he can pull me out. And the second one to sound the alarm in case I pull the one on the other end of the rope in with me." He said, "And I'm a solopreneur. I can't afford to pay 2 wages on the off chance I might get sucked into a septic tank." He could see the benefit of having a second person, but he felt with the third person, it had gone mad. It had gone to extremes. I'd forgotten about that until we were just talking now.
You say, control. So what do? Do you have a 4th person in case the third goes in?
Well, the third might jump in to save them.
Yes, we'll say you go.
Then what do you do?
Ad infinitum. You can have 2,000 people hanging around your septic tank, and they'll all fall in one at a time like dominoes.
Of course, it's not funny if somebody does do that. But actually, when we lived here in New Zealand the first time, one of the guys that came to empty the septic tank did actually fall in. But he also got himself out very quick, I presume, because it wasn't a very salubrious atmosphere. Okay, Ola says, and let me just post this one. "I feel like control's always been there to one extent or the other, but it's becoming very prevalent right now in a non-constructive way." Doris says she agrees with Tony. "We need control to set boundaries as long as it benefits everyone involved." Sarupa, like Ola and as Tony said, "I agree with need some control. It's just so much has become interference and controlling to try and make us clones, or controlling our freedom to think differently to what is held as politically correct. Like mothers now being called birth people. Can't offend those who want to be seen as women but aren't." Okay, Anita says, "I feel something starts as control for order and benefit of all, and then some go extreme into control for oppression, benefit of a few, and nanny stating." So that's good. We've got 3 or 4 comments here. Sally said control can be too exaggerated, especially if the emotions are driving you. Okay, I'm going to throw one in here because I like to. One of the biggest question marks that's going on at the moment is around the pandemic and around people having the vaccine. And the argument that governments saying people have to take the vaccine is infringing on their personal freedoms and rights. That's a form of control because the government is saying everybody has to have it. How do we feel? Is that an acceptable level of control? Is it too much? Is it not enough?
I think it's a degree of control that could be deemed as being necessary, purely from the fact of protecting the rest of the population. If I don't want to be controlled, I'm not going to have the virus. No one's going to tell me what to do. I'm not going to have the vaccination. So I can catch the virus and I can go out and spread it to all sorts of numbers of people who didn't have a choice. I've given them the virus. Whereas that degree of control where the government say you have to have it done, if not for your benefit, for everyone else's, I can understand that.
Haresh, what do you think?
Personally, I would prefer not to have to take the vaccine because to me, it's my body. I'd like a right on how I would like, it to go through. what it would, what I would like to choose for what it can go through and what it cannot. But I agree with Tony because the way I see it, you have to look at everyone's benefit. So if I'm staying in my local community, to what degree I can do without that vaccine, that's one thing. But if I'm going to be traveling and I want to know that I'm not going to be responsible for passing that virus on to someone else, then I think taking the vaccine as a way of creating a sense of calm and everybody feels they're on the same page with common ground, to me makes sense. That's how I see it.
How does the audience feel about it? Yeah, and I'd like to just address one piece, Haresh. With what we all know about our intuition and spirituality and our guidance, if we ask and we're told it's not safe, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But if we're not told that, there's no reason not to use the vaccine, because if we're not told that it's not safe, it's not going to damage our body. And with the tools we have at our disposal, we can take care of the energy of our body, which in turn takes care of its physicality.
Yes, I agree with that totally. Yeah.
It's the difference, I suppose, between whether we're looking at the community as a whole or looking at ourselves. I'm not getting any comments from many people. All has said the benefits of the vaccine far outweigh any risk involved. I'm not getting any comments from anybody else. Does that mean that the people that are on this chat don't like the idea of the vaccine and are just afraid to say so because I control whether they speak or not? Or is it that you don't know what to say? Swarupa says, and she's going to play the devil. Do we allow the devil in these meetings? You absolutely be sure we do. But playing devil here, the vaccine doesn't stop you getting or spreading. That's quite a large statement to make, Swarupa, because for many people it does. I think that's where the must vaccine versus don't want to, as perhaps people are so out of touch with their inner guidance system. Absolutely, the same people do fight for sovereignty, I agree. Sharon says, as I understand it, the vaccine protects the person who has it, but does not prevent us from spreading the virus to another. I've not heard that one, Sharon. And I would say, and this is where it comes back to who we are spiritually, taking the vaccine means that we're setting an intent here. And if we're setting an intent not to pass it on to other people, I would say that our energy doesn't transmit it. Bronwyn, I was not keen on the vaccine initially, to be honest. I don't think anybody was. I don't believe in vaccinations. But with this situation, because it mutates so much, we have no control over the vaccine, because as soon as we seem to get a handle on it, it changes. All we can do is control the opportunities it has to change. Anita feels it's important to trust our intuition as both sides are promoting their position point of view. Absolutely. So Bron says, and vaccine injury is real, and some people have been bullied into being silent about. What? And vaccine injury is real. Some people have died because of the vaccines, yes. When you look at that, the percentage is small, but there are still people with families who are going to be badly impacted by it. No death is acceptable. And they came out with it too quickly, and I think that's what's got a lot of people concerned, the speed with which the vaccine was created. I feel as time's gone on, they've started to realise they've tested us. They've tested us by offering it, and they've done tests on us by seeing how we've managed to use it. And that's control. We've become the control for the vaccine, the population. So does that mean it's a bad thing, or does it mean that in desperate times, sometimes we allow desperate measures? And Bronwyn finished by saying, that brings me peace, and yes, it's about trusting our intuition. It is. So this Facebook user says, I will be getting the vaccine. I agree to trust my intuition and guidance and use the tools we've been given. It is for the greater good. That's what I believe.
Okay.
I don't know that there's a right or a wrong. It's not about being right or wrong. For me, it's about looking at how many have already died. And you've only got to look at recently what happened in Australia with people from Victoria, travelling up to Queensland across borders when they were told not to, when Victoria was in shutdown. And now New South Wales has got the pandemic recurring again, and now they're suspecting that it's in Queensland. I'm not saying that those people took it there, but just when Australia thought they'd nailed it, this is what's happened. So, Amanda is one of the Facebook users. I wonder who the other one is. Doris said, I hesitated to take the vaccine. However, I felt it was necessary for the community. I think that's it. And that brings me to another piece about control. You know, I like to think that we have a community of people that interact together, and we all try to work collectively, not just within the community, but within our personal communities and in the greater community. I think the difference in control determines what's a community and what's a cult. How do others feel about that? Because that's control.
Well, a cult or a community?
No, I said the difference in control is what determines whether we're a community or we're a cult.
Yeah. I think a cult is obviously being controlled. Because most, from what I can see, I've never been in one, but from what I can, things I've read, seen, once you join a cult and you get into it quite deeply, your life's basically controlled by the leader or whoever you want to call him as a cult. Whereas a community, it's a similar scenario where a group of people come together, but invariably there's a small like hub that plan and control the community, but for the community's own benefit. It's for the benefit of everybody within that community. Whereas I say a cult to me now, it's just for the benefit of the person that started it, the leader of it, whatever you want to call them.
What do you reckon, Haresh? How do you see it?
I think this is where control and manipulation can work in a negative way. So if people are aware of where their buttons are, where they get easily tripped up or manipulated, if they're willing to look within themselves, and when they then come together from that space of awareness, we have a community. But when people don't look inside themselves to understand those emotions, someone can easily manipulate that. And that's when you get cults forming. That's how I see it.
I think a cult can start off as a community, and then it can become repressive. We've still got a couple of people talking about the vaccine. I just want to use this one. This is Olive. I don't like the idea of the vaccine, but I agree. I got my second vaccine last week. The pandemic really showed how readily and how much people pushed the boundaries of safety. So yes, control is very necessary. We just need to be awake to who and how we are being controlled. And always, as you say, check in with intuition and spirit to stay safe. I think that's a really valid point, Olive. Thank you. So coming back to cults and communities, which of course we're all a cult living under the illusion that we're a community, I presume. Doris says, a cult to my understanding is that the leaders do things to their own good, but not to the members' good. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the leader starts out believing anyway, that they're doing it for the good of the people, but they gradually become worse and worse, more and more restrictive, so that you don't control anything about your own life. Every aspect of it is controlled for you. Clara, whether free will is allowed or not makes the difference. Absolutely true. Absolutely true. A community has guidelines. A cult has guidelines. It's how much there's an opportunity to exercise what you know and feel and intuit. or not. Sonia, cult, personal gain, community, positive control, respects rules. Okay. So is control a necessary evil? What do you reckon, Haresh?
When you say necessary and evil and you put the words together, I find that interesting. Is it necessary? Yes. Is it evil? No. I think it comes down to intent. So coming back to the vaccine example, I think we need to look at what was the intent behind it. I mean, scientists across the world scrambled together as quickly as they could to come up with a solution for everyone. So it was approached with light.
Yeah.
Secondly, it brings me back to what Tony has said at times in the Healing Circle about, if you think of how much pollution we are creating in the world, 90% of it is mental.
Yeah.
So if we are going to spend time, if we look at the intent and it stands in light, and then we look at how can we best serve everyone to come together to instill a sense of calm and acceptance to move forward for the highest good of all, then it makes sense to take it. So to me, control is not a necessary evil. It's simply about how and where it's used. So necessary, but no evil. Yeah.
Very good. Tony?
Yeah, I think it certainly can be evil. And it's probably, in that case, it's necessary for the person that's doing the control. Because in controlling everybody, that person ultimately gets what they want or they think they want. So, but yeah, I think that it is a necessity. To me, it is, and I agree with what a lot of people have said. Helen and I we haven't had the vaccine yet. We can't get it yet anyway, but we haven't had it yet. If it was us on our own, living somewhere where we never saw anyone, like you, Haresh, we'd never have a vaccine. Full stop, period, no. But if we want to see our son and daughter-in-law in Australia, then we both would quite happily take it so that we don't go over there and not so much take it there, but bring it back here with us. Then Julian won't come over until they've had their injections, vaccine, so that they don't spread it over here. It's not, and I think it seems to be the majority. Well, I'd like to think the majority of people are accepting the control. Maybe they're just the guys they're using. Maybe they're kidding themselves like we are. We're really only having this vaccine for everyone else. I mean, maybe that's just an illusion, but to us, I think it's reality that we're having it for other people.
On principle, I don't agree with vaccines because Julian had a very bad experience with a vaccine when he was a baby and he was given the measles jab, and we almost lost him. And because homeopathically, like cures like, there are some people who will never get COVID, just as there are some people who will never get measles. And those people don't need a vaccine because they won't get it. But those people can be carriers of it. So they would need the vaccine to prevent them spreading it to other people. I think the problem's been, and this, I don't want this to be about the vaccine, but it seems to be, the problem's been that there are 3 or 4 different vaccines that have all been brought out quickly. They've all got their strengths, they've all got their weaknesses, and people don't feel they're being given the choice of which one to take based on what they're hearing. And I think if everyone, in the best of all worlds, if there were the equal number of vaccines, of each of the vaccines, and people could choose which one, you probably wouldn't have a problem because they'd feel they had some say in what was happening to them. I want to come back to the cult thing. Anam says, when the community members give their power and their freedom of speech away, they then become a cult, which I agree with Anam. Yeah. Sharon says, a cult is a system directed toward a particular figure or object, and yes, cult is about right or wrong. Community is about what is the truth for the individual as part of a group whilst doing no harm. Community is about standing on common ground together and working within that common ground. Absolutely. Anita, I believe we as people don't like being told what to do generally. I'd agree with that 100%. We didn't want to brush our teeth when we were little either, but it was for our own and everyone's benefit. And as a community, we brush our teeth. It's a good analogy. Sarupa, when it's harmless, control is necessary for sure. And it's been learning for me to stop making it about me and fighting all control too. I think that's a very good point, Sarupa. It's whether it's harmless or not. And if we're looking at the greater good, or whether we're looking at our personal preferences. What have we got? Doris, it's about being responsible to the community. So as a community, do you feel that the control that's operating within this group and community, because there is control, obviously, you've got to have boundaries. Do you feel that the control that operates in this community is healthy or unhealthy? Bearing in mind that if anybody says unhealthy, they'll be kicked out immediately.
Your name will suddenly disappear down the column, and you'll be lost in the abyss of eternity. Sounds dramatic.
That was very dramatic, darling. Very good. So how do you feel about within the community? Do you feel the community as a whole is self-regulating? This group is self-regulating?
When as much as they don't do what they're told. Yeah.
Well, they never do what they're told. No, I have to say none of them do what they're told. Probably says in that case she's not going to answer. Pia, it's healthy as it is standing in light. Well, I think we're all trying to, aren't we? We're trying to learn to control the pieces of us that like to separate in order to expand the pieces of us that like to be inclusive and move forward as one. Sonia thinks it's healthy. Any other comments from anyone? Or any other comment around control that you would like to add at this point?
I would like to say something about the community in control. I think at the moment it's not controlled enough. We need more control over it. Just kidding.
We'll say good night to you now.
Introduce more controls. I think as a member of this community who's been in it for a long time now, I think the best thing about this community is there's a vision and direction that you and Tony and John together have directed it towards, and to allow it to grow organically. And I think that's the main thing, because what happens is in any community, it goes through waves, ebbs and flows. And I think, and no community can grow without some friction or conflict, because it's through that understanding grows more deeply as well. So I think when I look at all the Facebook work, the posts, the talks by John, everything you've created, the portal, the Insight Teachings, the Exploring Intuitive Pathways, the portal, all the work in that, everything that you've offered together has given everybody a chance to understand themselves better so they can be the lights in the community. And therefore, this community becomes a community of light, which radiates gradually as it grows. So to me, it's been very organic, very easy in terms of understanding the energy and growing from it. That's how I see it.
Okay, well, I would like to say, first of all, that Exploring Intuitive Pathways isn't ours. For those of you that may not be aware, it is not ours. It's associated with us and aligned with us, absolutely, but it's not ours. I can't say that it's been easy, because you don't do as you're told. But I take your point, and I think it's true. I think Bronwyn makes a valid point. For a long time, we placed you in a position to be the one to regulate, while you were just trying to show us how we could be. Absolutely. And people sat there like school children. Sally, I can see that taking the vaccine is intended to protect people. Oh, we're back on the vaccine. I don't agree with this, Sally. I've got to say, I personally do not adhere to having a vaccination. That's your choice. But looking at disease origins and purification could take time, and a lot of people could die. Let's get rid of the disease and then look at what we could do to prevent another one, which is, I think, what some of the scientists are
That's
doing.
what they did with TB all those
Yeah,
years ago.
They
when
cured
that
TB.
was really prevalent.
Yeah.
They basically almost eliminated it. And then they started analysing how can we stop it reoccurring.
And John has always said, when you are sick, get well first. Then look at what you can do to prevent it happening again. Bronwyn, I reckon now that we've grown up and taken responsibility for ourselves within it, having gained the confidence to do so is very much a community now. I've got to say, Bron, for me, it was always a community. It was just the community that didn't see themselves as a community.
It was a bit fragmented.
Ola said, where's it gone? It's controlling a constructive way that works for all. And coming from an ex-rebel perspective, I've had my challenges because I've been coming from my mental body. And she goes on to say, when I've understood the light within the JTB community, all has been well. To be honest, why I'm asking this question is because this is exactly why some people agree with the vaccine and some don't. If you look at what's going on in the community, yes, Tony and I, and particularly me, have said things about do this, do that, let's try this, let's try that. And people have come into the community and they haven't wanted to be told what to do. But if there are rules in a community for the betterment of the community, for the energy to flow, those rules are there for a reason. They're not there because somebody, well, in this case, they're not there because Tony, John, or I thought it would be good to just chuck them in. So people come in and the first thing that gets triggered is their ego. In a challenge situation such as the pandemic, the first thing that's triggered is somebody's ego. We don't like being told what to do, but, you know, sometimes we don't know best. Sometimes we have to be willing to trust that others do and that they may be mistaken. But in this situation, whatever this situation may be, that's the best option. Let's try it. And if it doesn't work, let's look at how we could have done things differently. I think the biggest controlling factor in this world comes from people with closed minds. That's my little rant. Anita says, this community isn't politically correct. Absolutely not. And has discussions about stuff rather than beating people into their way of thinking. Well, I think I might have just proved you wrong there, Anita, because I beat you all into my way of thinking then. CJ, vaccines being created for protection of people in our world. Yes, it's put out quickly. It's an opportunity to protect, for all to thrive. Good to be aware of our own intuition, guidance, and also our own biases. Good. I would not choose to have a flu vaccine yet. I've never had a flu vaccine, and I don't feel the need to have one. COVID virus has been controlling people's health, so the vaccine is also an opportunity to take personal, family, communities, and our countries. I think we lost the end of that. So, have we actually achieved anything in this conversation, or have we just sounded off? Is control worth talking about any further? Or are we doomed to be controlled by not controlling anything? What do you mean?
I think without reading every individual one, I think that the majority of us are of the same mind. Whether or not, I think it's like everything, you don't necessarily have to accept something. If you can understand it, then whether or not you accept it doesn't really matter. If you understand it, whatever it might be, in this case it's taking the vaccine. If we can all understand why we would take it, even though we might not want to, we disagree with it, but we understand it, it makes it all livable, workable.
And those that disagree give us an opportunity to think about it from a different perspective. I don't have a problem with disagreements over it.
It's healthy.
Bronwyn's right. Control feels integral to commitment. Control as in self-control, our ability to control our own fears and judgments and biases. And however this is, I've enjoyed the discussion and learnt some things. I feel control is a big topic. Even the word control, people react to. They do.
Mm.
It's a trigger. Manipulation's a trigger. It's why we've been having these conversations, because I'd like to get people to come together to talk about things so we can understand each other better. Not so that we all end up saying the same thing and singing from the same song sheet, but so that we can get conversations going. There's not enough conversation going in the world. And at the moment, people trying to have conversations are being shut down. So I've enjoyed this. This is just me talking all the time.
That comes with control too.
It does.
Control.
That's control too. Did you notice I beat him then? Sharon says...
Did you notice how much I like being controlled and beaten?
Sharon says, what is the opposite of control? I think that is a conversation. It could be. It could be. Sharon says, Bronwyn says self-control. Orla, there's so much judgment around the word control that people sometimes choose to actively avoid it when it has so many positives. If we talk more about how it helps our lives, that may help others. Good point. Bron, otherwise we can just float through life without really living it, enjoying it as much as we could.
Well, the first bit sounds good.
Anita says, yes, having discussions about control is important as free speech is being eradicated little by little. Absolutely. And Sally, whilst the pandemic situation does warrant management by vaccination, which I can understand, in the light of its intent, I would have it if it were necessary for travel. Well, in that case, what you're saying is that if it meant you weren't restricted, you would have it. So that's a point. Some people will have the vaccination so that it empowers their freedom to move around. Some people will have the vaccination so that it empowers other people's freedom to move around. Some people won't have it, and some people have it, and they don't even know why. What do you reckon, Haresh, as a final, because we're going to have to sign off because we've got the evening with John shortly.
8 o'clock.
Yeah.
Sorry. I think control, I think to understand control, the best way is to understand where I'm controlled by my own emotions. Because the more I understand that, the more clear I am about that, the more open can I be to control in a positive way. That's how I see it. And with all this conversation around the vaccines, I think the whole purpose of insight teachings, from what I've understood, is about gaining insight through your intuition.
Yep.
So if you're going to have an issue with something, and if you're going to trust your intuition, then you move forward. But
Yep.
if you're going to go, get twisted around by your thoughts and emotions and judgments, then you're going to have a tough time. So that's what I would like to finish with. That's how I see it.
I agree with you, because then you're easily manipulated, which is where you began. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'd like to thank everybody. I'm glad that people have jumped in and said what they think. Well, I hope you've said what you think and haven't said what you thought might be politically correct. Shall we continue this conversation about control? Shall we perhaps next month talk about the positives of control, how we can use that energy constructively to build not just our community, but communities out in the world, conversational communities, digital communities. How does that appeal to people? Well, I've got 2 people that have said yes, so...
I think it appeals like an orange.
You think it appeals like an orange?
That's a good take on words.
That's actually no control. Control's gone now. We can go back to normal.
Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone. It's been great. Carry on between now and next month. Put in some thoughts into the Facebook Insight Essentials group. Let's pop them in there. Some ideas on positive uses of control to build community and conversation.
A lot of people want to carry on.
Yeah, I think it could. I think it could be good. And if you'd like to be on the panel, let me know.
You have to pass the test.
We don't know what the control test is, but you have to pass the test. But the point is, if you'd like to be on the panel, let me know, because I think it would be good to have a few people coming in and talking about this, and and bringing some positive possibilities of ideas to express and to explore. Thank you.
Or even if anyone finds themselves being controlled, how would they?
How do they turn it into a positive?
How do they change the boundaries or release the? Yeah.
I think we might be onto something here. This could be the next revolution.
Yeah, we might get cancelled.
We might get cancelled. We probably will get cancelled. Never mind, we can start our own pro-cancel culture, can't we?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. I'm going to go and have a quick cuppa before we start with John. So
Thank you.
I really appreciated it. Thank you, Haresh, for joining us. Thank you, Tony.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you, audience.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you, guys, for being a part of it. Without you, it wouldn't be worth doing. So thank you for releasing control of yourselves.
All right. We will talk to you again. Take care. Lots of love. Bye for now.
See you next time.